Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I wanted to talk to you today about understanding history. You know, I have dwelled in the field of history for, 40 years. And I've been speaking on various aspects of history longer than that. In fact, I gave my first talk on historical topics at a gathering of individuals in Rockaway, New Jersey in 1973. I guess that's 44 years ago. Yes, that was when I first babbled at people. And people would say, how do you know these things? How do you understand these things? And I said, but I read about them when they were news. And I think that's an important thing. You know, in this library, in fact, most of the stuff behind me here, this is all bound magazines. And far off beyond where the camera is another whole shelf which is filled with bound magazines and information going back to about 1810, 1812. And so I can look at much of our history when it was news. There's other things that are very interesting about that. You know, I'm just pulling out some stuff. I love early newspapers. Now this is the New York American newspaper. I have it in plastic just to protect it, but let's see. The New York American from November of 1823. And it's filled with fascinating stuff. Here's one I pulled out. This is the New York Herald from 1817. And it makes for fascinating reading when you look at this and you see the various advertisements and parts. I mean, what's shocking about this paper here is that there's an advertisement within for selling people, i.e. slavery. But what a wonderful way to learn history by looking at when all this history was new and exciting news. You know, here's something kind of fascinating. You know, we had a whole problem in the War of 1812. A lot of it had to do with impressed seamen. And of course, this is a whole article on that very fact written in 1813 for a publication called The War. Now, The War, this publication, as it says here, that it's published every Tuesday morning by S. Woodworth and Company at 60 Vesey Street, near the Bear Market in New York. Now, where was all this? Actually, that's more or less where the World Trade Center complex is today. And this is an edition of The War. I have several editions of this paper. This one, what's the date on it? It's August 3rd, 1813. And the rallying cry on the top is, "Proclaim liberty throughout the land." And that's interesting when you look at, you know, some of the stuff here in New York. There's fascinating newspapers in New York. Fascinating stories. Let me just pull one more of these from the New York area. This is an extremely delicate piece, so I have to try to get it out in one piece if I can. This is a very early newspaper in New York called the New York Weekly Museum. This is from 1810, very early. If you think about the history of the United States, 1810 is extremely, extremely early. We can go back further, and this is where it starts getting a lot of fun. Now, this is a beautifully preserved newspaper from 1776. I'll hold that up for you so you can see it. And it's the London Chronicle, and it's talking about New York City. Now, this was printed and pressed in England. But, of course, in 1776, there was a war going on. And, of course, there was a revolution in the colonies. And there's lots of articles here about Washington and the rebels. That's what they called. They weren't Continentals, they were rebels. And their misdeeds. And it talks about that they were 5 minutes from capturing George Washington. Stuff you don't usually get to hear. But this is what makes history fun. If you get the opportunity, if you get the chance, try to find original documentation. It's wonderful reading a history book. But you know something? Like I would do and like you would do, we would take stuff that we found fascinating and add it. And we'd leave the rest behind. The thing is that quite often, what we leave behind is far more fascinating than what we keep. It's just that we don't think so. But we're one person. So my suggestion is, ladies and gentlemen, surround yourself with history. If you love history, try to read magazines from 150 years ago. Try to read newspapers from 200 years ago. And you can get a feel and you can touch the history. There is nothing like holding this rag paper newspaper. By the way they used to make paper years ago was called rag paper. It was cloth and paper together, and it's very strong. That's why these survive. Newspapers today hold onto it for a year and it's turned various colors and it's ready to fall apart. But the thing is that the New York Herald, of course, which would become a very important newspaper, and eventually Horace Greeley would belong to it. But that teaches me a lot about the city. It teaches me a lot about people. There's articles. I have bound magazines where they're talking about individuals who are so important in our history. And there's an interview with them, and they're asking questions and answering them, and it's fascinating. But folks, today people don't want to read. There seems to be a lack of fascination with this. And I find that rather sad. So I'm having an evening here. I've been sitting down and reading and sipping some wine and thinking. And I thought I would chit-chat and share a little of this with you. Because you know something, how often do you get to see this kind of stuff? You know, I guess I dreamed early on, I've told you I wanted to create a library. And so I added various pieces. I have fossils, I have early paperwork, newspapers, early magazines, all bound. Stuff that can expand the mind. Because knowledge is knowledge, as I have said before, be it old or be it new. It still is knowledge, and both are worthy of the other. So, a little thought, a little show and tell. I've got to pull out more. I've got lots of early newspapers, early magazines and stuff. And I want to give you an idea of what people were thinking then, rather than what we think now. It's very important. So that's about all I wish to talk about tonight. I hope this has been a little bit enlightening to you. So thank you very much.